So, my friend, you want to learn about the Daedra? Well, pull up a seat, grab some mead, and keep your voice down, because we have a lot to cover today as we deep dive into the Daedric princes. But before we do, I'd like to start with a quote from the notes of Pelagius Haber, council daedrologist in residence Imperial City, who wrote, "Unlike the stuffy and aloof Aedra, the princes suffer from the same neuroses, flaws, and childish fixations that trouble men and Mer. They are more like us than we care to admit." With that in mind, let's start off with Azura. In between night and day, light and dark, that is where Azura thrives. Her sphere is described in the Book of Daedra as dusk and dawn, the magic in between realms of twilight, known as Moon Shadow, Mother of the Rose, and Queen of Night Sky. The book, The Doors of Oblivion by Sif Ij-Hijja, describes Azura's realm, Moon Shadow, as a place of overwhelming beauty that's welcoming of mortals. Quote, "I see flowers and waterfalls, majestic trees, a city of silver, but it is all a blur. The colors run like water. It's raining now, and the wind smells like perfume. This surely is Moon Shadow, where Azura dwells." While other Daedric princes like Boethiah take on various forms, Azura maintains a female image and has been depicted as so throughout the history of Tamriel. By mortal standards, and of course when comparing her to the other Daedric princes, Azura is largely considered to be more benevolent compared to her Daedric counterparts, depending on who you ask, of course. For example, a priestess of Azura who authored a book titled Invocation of Azura gives us some insight into the Queen of the Night Sky. Unlike the other Daedric princes, Azura cares for those who worship her. Quote, "Molag Bal wanted my mind, Boethiah wanted my arms, and Nocturnal perhaps my curiosity. Azura wants all of that and our love above all. Not our abject slavering, but our honest and genuine caring in all its forms. It is important to her that our emotions be engaged in her worship, and our love must also be directed inward. If we love her and hate ourselves, she feels our pain." Despite her benevolence and caring nature towards her followers, the priestess Sigilla Parata also notably described Azura in the same text as cruel but wise, indicating that like many of the other Daedric princes, there's more to the Queen of the Night Sky than meets the eye and plenty of unknowns. In fact, one of the theories regarding the Dwemer disappearance actually puts the blame on Azura for teaching Nerevar how to separate the power of Lorkhan's heart from the Dwemer. In the book Azura and the Box, an author named Marobar Sul tells the story of a wise old Dwemer named Chilbar, who after years of adventure and study was left with one lingering question. Quote, "Were the greater beings the masters of the entire world, or did the humbler creatures have the strength to forge their own destinies?" In his search for the answer to this question, he summoned Azura and challenged her to prove her absolute knowledge by telling the group of students he had gathered what object was inside a box that was placed in the middle of the room. Azura indicated that a red-petaled flower lay in the box, but much to the surprise of those in attendance, when Chilbar opened it to show the contents, it was empty. Before he or any of his students had a chance to see Azura's reaction, she vanished. However, the priest who helped Chilbar summon Azura did see her reaction and was left terrified and felt as though a curse had been bestowed upon them. As those in attendance exited the room and Chilbar made his way to bed, a red flower petal fell from his sleeve, signifying that he had cheated the Daedric prince. That night, Chilbar passed away in his sleep. While there has been some debate as to whether the book should be taken as factual account of history or a work of fiction, some believe that the story fuels the theory that Azura was so offended by the dwarf's deception that she eventually played a part in the Dwemer disappearance years later, when her champion Nerevar defeated the Dwemer in the First Era. Of course, there are plenty of other theories surrounding the Dwemer disappearance as well, which I might do a video on down the line if there's enough interest. If we dig a little deeper, we can see another example of Azura's wrath that can't be disputed. Her role in turning the Chimera into the Dunmer by cursing them and all their offspring with skin as dark as ash and eyes that burned fiery red. This took place after several Chimera leaders betrayed their oath to the Daedric prince and elevated themselves to godhood with an Daedric artifact known as the Heart of Lorcan, believed to be pulled directly from the deity Lorcan as punishment after his creation of the mortal plane. From that day on, the Dunmer, or the Dark Elves, bore the curse of Azura as a constant reminder of their fall from favor with the Daedric prince. The Khajiit also revere Azura, calling her the mother of all Khajiit, who the Elsewhere natives credit with bestowing moon sugar upon them. In Khajiit culture, moon sugar is considered to be crystallized moonlight and the holiest of substances given to them by the gods, according to the Elsewhere Confederacy section of the Pocket Guide to the Empire, 1st edition. In Skyrim, Azura's shrine can be seen standing tall over even the largest of mountains, with the moon in one hand and her star in the other. Upon discovery of the shrine south of Winterhold, we're told by the last priestess of Azura that she has been expecting us. The conversation begins a quest to recover one of the Daedric prince's artifacts, Azura's star, which was stolen by a necromancer named Malin Varen, who sought to preserve his soul within it, thus becoming immortal. In Skyrim, after reclaiming it, the Dragonborn is given the option of either taking it to Malacath, who will turn it black, or bringing it back to Azura, who will cleanse it of Malin Varen's spirit and crown us her new champion. Her other artifact, the Ring of Azura, doesn't appear in Skyrim, but does appear in Morrowind, where it is given to players upon the conclusion of the main quest. Azura also has an artifact known as the Great Ring of the Ancestors, one clan under Moon and Star, commonly referred to as Moon and Star, a dwarven ring blessed by Azura belonging to Nerevar, which granted him supernatural powers and ended the life of any other who tried to wear it. Another one of Azura's artifacts, the Moonlight Blade, can be seen in Elder Scrolls Online and is described as a crescent moon-shaped blade believed by the Khajiit to have been gifted to them by Azura herself. Mazamiri and Elsewhere describes the origins and the power of the blade as, quote, a gift from our mother Azura and the greatest treasure of our order. Those who learn the Moonlight Blade's discipline can cut through the boundaries between worlds and usher souls from one realm to another. Although Azura is considered to be benevolent, things get a bit more murky as we take a look at this next prince. Depicted as both a man and a woman throughout the Elder Scrolls series, Boethiah is considered to be one of the three good Daedra, alongside Azura and Mephala in the Dunmer pantheon, while being viewed as one of the more quote-unquote demonic Daedra lords in the book On Oblivion. This is reflected in Skyrim, when we, as the Dragonborn, are called to sacrifice a follower to the Daedric prince in the quest Boethiah's Calling. But we'll get to that later, because while this quest may lead some to believe that Boethiah is nothing but bloodthirsty and cruel, there's more to this Daedric prince than meets the eye. In a book titled Boethiah's Proving, an anonymous author recorded a first-hand account of a time when Boethiah's followers summoned the Daedric prince, but got more than they bargained for. In the book Invocation of Azura, the author writes that Boethiah's worshippers are known to hold bloody competitions in Boethiah's honor because the Daedric prince views battle as a blessing. Even though that may not have been the intention at the time of this particular summoning recorded in Boethiah's Proving, that's exactly what happened. After being summoned, Boethiah appeared as a Dunmer warrior queen, along with 2 of her artifacts, which we'll also talk more about later. When the Daedric prince's first follower spoke, proclaiming that every night he prayed to the Prince of Plots in an attempt to earn her favor, Boethiah quickly made the faithful follower vanish into thin air. She then turned to the second follower, asking how she should measure the worth of his existence. However, after failing to find adequate words, he too vanished with a simple clap of Boethiah's hands. Turning to the third follower that stood before her, she asked, "How shall I know you apart from such as were they, of whom there is no trace?" Shaken and speechless, the third follower asked Boethiah for mercy, but was met with a similar fate as the first 2. Then, the Queen of Shadows and Goddess of Destruction turned to the fourth follower, who wrote about the ordeal in first-person point of view in Boethiah's proving, indicating that it was he who spoke to the Daedric prince. As he recalled, after being asked to prove his existence, he executed the final follower in a bold act to prove his worth, proclaiming, quote, "I am alive because that one is dead. I exist because I have the will to do so, and I shall remain as long as there are signs of my handwork, such as the blood dripping from this blade." In the text, Boethiah was quoted as simply saying, "Indeed." The story encompasses several different aspects of the Daedric prince and her sphere, which can also be described as destructive. Like we explained before, the Dark Warrior considers battle to be a blessing. This partly explains why Boethiah, who is often depicted as a fearsome warrior, is associated with 3 Daedric artifacts that are all useful in combat. While artifacts such as the Grey Cowl allow the wearer to conceal their identity, Boethiah's artifacts are designed for war. A book titled The Story of Lyrisius sheds light on the creation of Boethiah's first artifact, a shield named Fearstruck. As the story goes, the shield was given to a Breton named Lyrisius by Boethiah. However, it was destroyed after Lyrisius fled the Akaviri forces. According to the text, quote, "Far from the lands of men, Lyrisius entered the blasted lands. At the heart of this forsaken landscape, he met the worm. The great scaly beast mocked the mighty blows of Lyrisius's enchanted spear. It melted the shield Fearstruck, gift of the Daedra Boethiah, with a single blast of its fiery breath. The destruction of Fearstruck forced Lyrisius to surrender to the worm. However, in a stunning twist of fate, he thrust his dagger deep beneath the worm's scale in such a way that it was unable to remove it. The worm demanded Lyrisius remove the blade, but he refused to do so until the worm first destroyed the Akaviri army in High Rock, bringing an end to the first Akaviri invasion. While it's unknown why Boethiah bestowed Fearstruck upon Lyrisius, if the legend is to be believed, the decision to gift the shield to Lyrisius serves as a reflection of the shrines we see of Boethiah in Skyrim, displaying the Daedric prince as an unyielding warrior. However, true Daedric artifacts cannot be destroyed. They eventually reform, which is why we can wield Fearstruck upon completing the Tournament of the Ten Bloods quest. This brings us to the second artifact of Boethiah, and one you may be familiar with, Goldbrand. Much like Fearstruck, Goldbrand was created to be wielded by only the highest quality of warrior. It's depicted as a sword created by the dragons of the north and imbued with the power of Boethiah, burning those cut down by its golden blade. According to the book Tamrielic Lore, after the dragons of the north created the blade, it was given to a Nordic warrior named Sivdur, who was sworn to protect them. In Skyrim, we not only have a chance to explore Sivdur's tomb, but we also interact with his descendants in Clan Battleborn. The final artifact of Boethiah that we'll be talking about today is the famed ebony mail, which we have the chance to acquire in Skyrim. Although it appears in Skyrim, the Ebony Male's origins date back to the early days of Nirn before recorded history. For more insight into the Ebony Male, we turn back to Tamrielic lore by Yagram Bagan, who wrote that it is Boethiah and Boethiah alone who gets to decide who can possess the armor and for how long. In the Fourth Era, during the events of Skyrim, we eventually learn through the Boethiah's calling quest that the Daedric Prince's armor currently belongs to a dark elf simply called the Champion of Boethiah. While we could get right to the chase and take him out, if we use a calm spell on the Dunmer, we can speak with him and learn that he no longer identifies as Boethiah's champion and has been waiting for the Daedric Prince to send someone to assassinate him and claim the armor in Boethiah's name. After slaughtering the Dark Elf at Knife Point Ridge and equipping the armor, Boethiah will appear and name the Dragonborn as the new champion. Now, we shift our focus to the prince, whom Pelagius Haber wrote about in the beginning of this video, and called his favorite of all the Daedra lords, Clavicus Vile. To begin, we turn back to Pelagius Haber, who wrote, quote, "As for me, of all the Daedric princes, Clavicus Vile is my favorite, and it has everything to do with his loyal hound, Barbas." Those words, written by Pelagius Haber in his book, The Vile Truth of Barbas, couldn't be more true. Clavicus Vile, also known as the Prince of Trickery and Bargains, as well as the Master of Insidious Wishes, is one of the most unique Daedric princes in the sense that he takes on the form of both a Daedric prince and his dog, Barbas, who has been depicted alongside Clavicus going all the way back to the Merethic era, and who is believed to be an extension of the Daedric prince's power. His sphere is described in the Book of Daedra as the granting of power and wishes through ritual invocations and pacts. Unlike the other Daedric princes, Clavicus Vile has been described as social in nature and often finds himself bored in search of entertainment through mortals, or of course, his canine counterpart. While the phrase, "there's more than meets the eye," applies to a number of Daedric princes, one could argue that it applies to none so much as it does Clavicus Vile. Considered to be one of the more quote-unquote sophisticated Daedra, Clavicus Vile is generally depicted as being on the younger side, which may explain why he often finds himself bored and in search of entertainment. It's because of his constant boredom that Clavicus Vile will meddle in the affairs of mortals, using them as pawns in a game he orchestrates. In Redguard, Clavicus summarizes the rules of his game, and spoiler alert, when it comes to this Daedric prince, nothing in this game is as it seems. He says, quote, "You think you lose, you die, and that's the end. It's not." Some of Clavicus's games, by mortal standards, can be considered cruel and more like a sick joke that only he enjoys. Much like one would enter into a deal with the devil only to find themselves duped, those who call upon Clavicus often find that when bargaining with the Daedric prince, things rarely go according to plan. This is seen in Ithelia's tale, which is probably the most well-known story regarding one of this Daedric prince's artifacts, the Mask of Clavicus Vile, which allows the wearer to be seen more favorably by those they encounter. In Yagram Bagan's Tamrielic lore, we learn of Ithelia, a noblewoman who was disfigured by a spiteful servant as a child. Years later, in a desperate attempt to undo her disfigurement, she made a deal with the Prince of Trickery and Bargains. Although Clavicus didn't turn her into a beautiful woman, he bestowed upon her the Mask of Clavicus Vile, allowing her to be admired by the citizens of Tamriel. Thanks to the mask, Ithelia went on to marry a respected baron, ultimately becoming pregnant with his child. However, in a cruel twist of fate, Clavicus Vile reclaimed the mask, allowing everyone to see her for who she truly was. Furious, the baron banished Ithelia from his house. However, in this case, Clavicus Vile wasn't the only one to get the last laugh. Exactly 21 years and 1 day later, the child Ithelia was pregnant with, at the time of her banishment, exacted revenge on the Baron, slaying him in honor of her mother. Another example of an instance where Clavicus turned a bargain into a cruel joke of sorts can be seen when looking at his second artifact, the Rueful Axe. As we learn from Barbas in Skyrim, Clavicus Vile created the axe at the request of Sebastian Lort, a wizard whose werewolf daughter worshipped Hircine. In a desperate attempt to cure his daughter of lycanthropy, Lort prayed to Clavicus only to be gifted the Rueful Axe, offering him the opportunity to take matters into his own hands. This weapon can come into possession of the last Dragonborn in Skyrim during the quest, a Daedra's best friend. At the end of the quest, we're offered the opportunity to execute Barbas in exchange for the axe, further adding to the list of examples showing Clavicus's cruel games. The Daedric Prince also has 2 other artifacts seen in Elder Scrolls games. The first is Bitter Cup, an artifact prized by the prince's followers. The urn-shaped object appears in Morrowind and can be seen in Skyrim during the Creation Club quest, A Dying Wish. Although its origin story is unclear, those in possession of it are warned not to sip from it. The fourth and final Daedric artifact of Clavicus Vile is Umbra, a sword that allows whoever wields it to send souls from the mortal realm to the prince himself. According to Tamrielic lore, the sword was created in the Second Era by a witch named Naenra Wire at the behest of Clavicus himself. Of course, when it comes to Clavicus Vile, nothing ever is as it seems, and after Naenra created the sword, it was deemed unstable. To combat the situation, the Daedric Prince imbued a piece of his own power into the weapon. The result was that the blade became sentient, calling itself Umbra, and taking on a life of its own, slowly assuming control of whoever wields it. In Skyrim, we have the chance to take ownership of the sword and protect Shor's Stone by executing Cressitus, an imperial treasure hunter who broke both his legs exploring mountains east of Shor's Stone. There, in the crypts of an ancient Nordic ruin known as Champion's Rest, he discovered the sword, which magically healed his legs, before then beginning to consume him until he himself began to go by the name of Umbra. Interestingly enough, Cressitus isn't the first owner of the sword to take on the persona of Umbra. In Oblivion, we encounter a wood elf warrior named Lenwyn, who found the sword and in turn began picking fights with villagers whom she would slaughter to satisfy both the sword and Clavicus Vile's need for souls, before going on to become a mercenary, calling herself Umbra. Despite fulfilling the wishes of the weapon, in her later years, Lenwyn became regretful of her actions and retreated to Vindicil, where we have the chance to defeat her and claim the sword for ourselves. Whether your goal is to earn the favor of those around you like Ithelia, or cure a loved one of a terrible ailment such as Sebastian Lort, you do well to tread carefully when dealing with Clavicus Vile, just like this next prince. Hermaeus Mora, the Prince of Forbidden Knowledge, the Prince of Fate, the Demon of Knowledge, Hermaeus Mora values one thing above all else: knowledge. The more hidden the truth, the more secretive the knowledge, the more this Daedric prince considers it to be of value. In the Book of Daedra, Hermaeus Mora's sphere is described as, quote, scrying of the tides of fate, of the past and future as read in the stars and heavens, and in whose dominion are the treasures of knowledge and memory. Be warned, however, because Hermaeus Mora will do anything to protect that knowledge. As the Khajiit author Thavako cautions readers in the Epistle on the Spirits of Amun-Dro, Volume 2, quote, Khajiit who call on Hermora's counsel risk a fate worse than death. Mumbles from the sea will tear a mind asunder as surely as the most potent skooma. His briny truths shred our sense of reality and set us adrift, far from Jyggalag. It's because of that Hermaeus Mora both hoards and protects any knowledge that could endanger reality, even going so far as to wipe another Daedric prince from existence. But we'll get back to that later. Unlike the rest of the Daedric princes, Hermaeus Mora doesn't take on a physical form that resembles a human. Instead, the Prince of Forbidden Knowledge manifests in the form of a dark, amorphous blob covered in tentacles, as seen in both early depictions of him from the Second Era, as well as in Skyrim, where we venture into Apocrypha, Hermaeus Mora's realm of oblivion that serves as a library for all forbidden knowledge. Given that, it's no surprise that Hermaeus Mora's artifacts manifest in the form of books such as the Ogma Infinium, a forbidden book whose cover is depicted as being a collection of several covers stitched together. Although it is seen in Skyrim, it's Elder Scrolls Online that really builds up the lore surrounding the origins of this mysterious tome. According to a book titled The Worldly Spirits, the Khajiit consider Hermaeus Mora to be the keeper of the knowledge of others, and according to the book The Thief God's Treasures, the Khajiit trickster god, known as Hircine, stole a Daedric artifact known as the Ring of Khajiiti from the Daedric prince Mephala, and then used it to infiltrate Apocrypha and steal the Ogma Infinium from Hermaeus Mora. In addition to the Ogma Infinium, Hermaeus Mora has a number of black books that serve as Daedric artifacts. Also seen in Skyrim, each of these mysterious black books contain hidden knowledge regarding the past and the future, personally created by Hermaeus Mora. Despite this Daedric prince valuing knowledge above all else, the next artifact associated with the Demon of Knowledge is First Blade, a weapon you may know better as Miraak's sword. Born in the Merethic era, Miraak is now considered to be the first Dragonborn. After leaving the cult and seeking out the teachings of Hermaeus Mora, Miraak became the Daedric prince's champion, combining the Prince of Forbidden Knowledge's wisdom with his own ability to devour the souls of dragons. With the ability to bend the wills of dragons thanks to Hermaeus Mora, Miraak was able to overthrow the dragons he once served. It's because of this that the Skaal consider Miraak to be, quote, the traitor. However, as we see in the events of Skyrim, everything may not be as it seems. Remember the quote from the Khajiit author referenced above? How Hermaeus Mora's truths shred our sense of reality and set us adrift. In Skyrim, Miraak can be heard saying several interesting lines that may indicate his pursuit of knowledge could have led him to being manipulated by Hermaeus Mora. In one instance he says, Hermaeus Mora is laughing at us, you know. While in another instance, he says, beware, Hermaeus Mora will betray you as he has me. Despite that, the book, The Guardian, and The Traitor by Lucius Gallus in Skyrim indicated that after Miraak overthrew the dragons he once served, he fought Varlock, another dragon priest who finally defeated him after 2 days of fighting. When Varlock was prepared to deliver one final crushing blow, Hermaeus Mora saved his champion at the last moment, bringing him to Apocrypha, where he served the Prince of Forbidden Knowledge until the events of Skyrim, when he figured out how to use his powers to influence the people of Solstheim to rebuild his temples in an effort to escape. Miraak's sword was then seen for the first time since the Second Era, when the first Dragonborn battles the last Dragonborn in Skyrim. The sword is rather unique in the sense that the tentacles which wrap around the blade actually extend to attack opponents, sapping their stamina and exposing a green eye at the base of the sword. We also see another of Hermaeus Mora's artifacts, Mora's Whispers, in Elder Scrolls Online. The armor item is enchanted to allow the wearer to learn faster. The pauldrons feature a number of the elements used to portray the Daedric prince, including tentacles that protrude from the sides and living eyes. Although Hermaeus Mora may be one of the most mysterious and knowledgeable Daedric princes, those interested in uncovering the forbidden truths guarded in Apocrypha would do well to tread carefully. When it comes to this next Daedric prince, we shift from focusing on knowledge to sport. Hircine, also known as the father of lycanthropy, is one of the most widely revered Daedric princes in all of Tamriel, despite never actually seeking to earn the reverence of followers. The one thing Hircine values above all is the thrill of a fair hunt. It's because of that his realm of oblivion is known as the hunting grounds, described as an endless forest where Hircine and his fellow huntsmen partake in great hunts for beasts, people, and even other Daedra. Depicted as a fearsome hunter with the head of an elk, oftentimes carrying a great spear, Hircine is, dare I say, one of the more straightforward Daedric princes. While some like Sheogorath take great joy in playing games with mortals that often include cruel twists of fate, Hircine values sport and competition, seeking to successfully hunt down capable prey rather than simply slaughtering weakened thralls to satisfy a bloodlust. Through the ill-met-by-moonlight quest in Skyrim, we learn that Hircine actually even admires the prey that escape his pursuit, as well as those that turn the tables on he, his huntsmen, and their bloodsport, making hunters the hunted. Known as the father of man-beasts, Hircine is the father of lycanthropy, meaning he serves as the guardian of were-creatures. In Daggerfall, we see that the Master of Beasts is quite proud of lycanthropy and even calls were-creatures his children, regardless of whether they are werewolves or, in this case, werebores. However, in the previously mentioned Daggerfall quest, we can see that the Daedric prince resents those who regret their decision to become were-creatures. Because of this, he will send huntsmen to slay them if he deems it necessary. At the end of their mortal lives, the souls of those who have accepted the gift of lycanthropy are claimed by the Lord of the Hunt, who allows them to spend eternity in his realm. According to the Reach folk, Hircine takes on multiple forms, considered to be 5 different aspects of the Daedric prince. In Oral Traditions of the Reachman No. 5 by Juno Procillus, Academy of Coral, the author writes, quote, "Like the fingers of your hand, like the clutch of the hagraven, like the arrows to kill a bear, 5 are the aspects of Lord Hircine. You may meet any of the 5. All are true and right and death in the woods. All are worthy of reverence." The 5 aspects of Hircine manifest in different forms. Alrabeg, considered to be the hunter, appears on Nirn to hunt prey or bring new prey to the mortal realm, oftentimes while carrying one of Hircine's artifacts, the Spear of Bitter Mercy. This aspect is called upon by worshippers prior to a hunt in hopes of a fruitful hunt. Storybeg, known as the Man-Beast, or better known as the wolf aspect of Hircine, is the second aspect of Hircine and the form which gave mortals the gift of lycanthropy. When Hircine comes to Nirn in this form, it's to hunt with his fellow huntsmen known as skin shifters, or to adopt new children. But of course, we know what adopting new children really means. The third aspect of Hircine is Urikenbeg, known as the Great Dark Stag. When Hircine takes this form, he does so either to mate with female deer or to lure prey into his herd, which are then taken back to the hunting grounds to meet their end in the Master of Chase's realm. Gullabeg, the fourth aspect of Hircine, is considered to be a trickster, serving as a foil to Hircine's more widely accepted nature, which values a fair hunt. This is seen in the symbol of Gullabeg quest in Elder Scrolls Online, where we learn that this aspect, also known as the Quick Fox, will either trick mortals into meeting their own demise or reward those who he deems clever by teaching them his secrets, as written in the book Aspects of Lord Hircine. Last but certainly not least, we have Hrokibeg, known as the Mighty Bear. This aspect of Hircine embodies strength and peace. Although those two traits seem to contradict each other, Hrokibeg finds peace through his strength, coming to Nirn in search of solitude and striking down those who disturb his peace. This brings us to Hircine's artifacts, some of which you may already be familiar with, and all of which directly correlate to Hircine's lycanthropic pride and his love for blood sport. Whether it's because Hircine is one of the most revered Daedric princes throughout Tamriel, or merely just a coincidence, the Lord of the Hunt has a significant number of artifacts that exist in the mortal realm. There are weapons such as the glass bow of the Stag Prince, which bestows the blessing of Hircine upon the wielder, as well as the spear of the hunter, which is seen being wielded by Hircine in various depictions of the Daedric Prince. There's also another weapon known as the Spear of Bitter Mercy referenced before, which also appears in Skyrim. Several other artifacts of Hircine also appear in Skyrim, such as the Savior's Hide. According to the often referenced book Tamrielic Lore, the most widely known tale regarding the creation of the armor indicates that the Daedric prince created it as a reward for the first mortal to escape his hunting grounds. However, over time, pieces of the armor have been lost, with only records of the cuirass existing beyond the middle of the Third Era, according to Chimere's notes about the armor of the Savior's Hide. There are also several rings that belong to the Daedric Prince, including a set of 4 rings known as the Rings of Werewolves. These rings, created during the Third Era during the Great Hunt on Solstheim of 427, are seen in Blood Moon, the second expansion to Morrowind, and in the Skyrim Dragonborn DLC. They are known as the Ring of Bloodlust, the Ring of Instinct, the Ring of the Hunt, and the Ring of the Moon. The Huntsman of the Princes also has one final ring seen in Skyrim, known as the Ring of Hircine. This ring temporarily gifts the wearer lycanthropy in a controlled form that allows lycanthropic users to guide their transformations independent of full moons. Those who haven't earned the ring, however, are punished, with the Daedric Prince instead making their lycanthropic transformations unpredictable. Hircine also has several ancient totems that we learn about in the book The Totems of Hircine. In it, the author writes, quote, "There are legends that he also set into the world, specific artifacts of his power. They date to a period when men could neither write, nor speak, nor barely think. But the powers of blood, of the beast, were yet flowing strong among the selected." The book describes 3 totems, the first being the carved skull of a wolf used by ancient shamans in blood ceremonies, the second being a thigh bone carved from an unknown animal used as a, quote, "medicinal wand" that reportedly allows whoever carries it to have a heightened sense of smell and sight to aid in hunting, and the third, a simple drum which, according to the book, was used to summon allies. The book also writes that, through these totems, discover the abilities that first tamed the world before wrought civilization sullied it. No matter how sullied Tamriel has become with civilization, there's always one place where the purity of sport and the thrill of a fair hunt will be honored, in Hircine's hunting grounds. However, once every era, Hircine returns to Nirn for the Blood Moon Prophecy, an event that primarily took place through the first 3 eras according to the Skald. According to their legend, the event saw the Daedric Prince hunt mortals of Nirn, some of whom perish, while others are taken back to his hunting grounds. Although Hircine is viewed as one of the most widely accepted Daedric princes, this next prince is shrouded in enough mystery for the both of them. Ithelia, the Prince of Paths, the mistress of the untraveled road, the unseen, and the fate changer. Remember earlier when we mentioned that Hermaeus Mora even went so far as to wipe another Daedric prince from existence? Meet Ithelia, the newest Daedric prince, who we really know very little about compared to many of the rest. According to dialogue with Hermaeus Mora in Elder Scrolls Online, Ithelia supposedly had the ability to shape destiny, bending and weaving the fabric of time as she pleased. Hermaeus Mora, who has books that contain knowledge of the past and future, foresaw Ithelia eventually unraveling reality. In response, the Prince of Forbidden Knowledge gathered the other Daedric princes and suggested wiping her from the memory of every living being, as well as all records of her existence. Against the wishes of Periite and Vermina, Hermaeus Mora went ahead with the plan, erasing all traces of Ithelia from the universe, including from the minds of the other Daedric princes. Despite that, the Demon of Knowledge was unable to wipe the memory of Ithelia from his own mind and considered the knowledge of the Forgotten Prince to be among the most valuable pieces of information in Apocrypha. As we learn in Elder Scrolls Online, however, Ithelia left behind a loyal servant, a clanless Dremora named Torvasard, as a contingency plan to restore her memory. In the events of the quest, A Hidden Fate, we learn that Torvasard has begun to experience dreams, a phenomenon unheard of for Dremora. With faint flashes of memories of Ithelia, he made a proposition to Vermina and Periite, both of whom had faint recollection of the events from Torvasard's dream. Together, the three fought against Hermaeus Mora and restored many of the forgotten memories of Ithelia by accessing 2 of 3 glyphs. However, Hermaeus Mora secured the third, protecting the universe from Ithelia's return. As the Demon of Knowledge stated in Elder Scrolls Online, quote, "Torvasard, something I did not foresee, an agent of Ithelia, hidden for all these eons, her contingency plan, her revenge. At least the final glyphic is secure. Until it is found and opened, reality remains safe." This summer, Elder Scrolls Online released Gold Road, which gives fans a chance to learn about Ithelia through a gripping story that offers plenty more insight into her nature. But we won't spoil it for you, given that it's only been out for a few months. With this Daedric prince's story still being written, it will be interesting to see what new additions to Ithelia's lore we get in the future. We now go from the Forgotten Prince to one who doesn't even have total control over his own realm. Jyggalag, the Prince of Order, or should I say, the Paradoxical Prince. Jyggalag's sphere represents logical order and deduction. Interestingly, much like Hermaeus Mora, Jyggalag maintained a great library that was believed to contain a logical prediction of every detail and every action that has ever and would ever take place on Mundus. As his Chamberlain, who we'll talk more about briefly, explains in The Shivering Isles from Oblivion, quote, "The great library was the height of logic and deduction. Contained within its walls were the logical prediction of every action ever taken by any creature, mortal or Daedric. Every birth, every death, the rise of Tiber Septim, the Numidium, everything, all predicted with the formulae found within Jyggalag's library. When Sheogorath discovered the library, he had it burned, insisting that it was an abomination and that personal choice defied logical prediction. I am all that remains of the knowledge contained within the great library of Jyggalag." Through dialogue with Jyggalag in the Shivering Isles, we learn that in the time before recorded history, Jyggalag ruled over a realm of perfect order that stretched far across the seas of oblivion. His realm was so perfect that the other Daedric princes grew to fear and resent him. As such, they cursed him to live as Sheogorath, another Daedric prince known as the Prince of Madness, who we'll talk about later in this video. This iteration of Jyggalag served as a foil to his true nature, creating an incarnation of the thing the Prince of Order most despised. At the end of every era, during an event known as the Grey March, Jyggalag was allowed to return to the Shivering Isles to attempt to retake the land from Sheogorath. However, at the end of every Grey March, the cycle starts again, with Jyggalag taking on the form of Sheogorath. Before the time of Sheogorath, Jyggalag entrusted Chamberlain Daius with taking care of tasks he deemed to be mundane. Once the other Daedric princes decided to curse the Prince of Order and Sheogorath took control of his realm, he slaughtered many of Jyggalag's followers and banished plenty of others. The only exception was Chamberlain Daius. Despite burning down the Great Library, Sheogorath kept Daius alive and allowed him to remain in the realm because of the unique knowledge possessed by the Chamberlain. As we see in the Shivering Isles, Daius winds up locked away for all eternity in the remains of the great library he once maintained. As he states in the Shivering Isles, quote, "You were expecting a book, an ancient tome filled with the secrets that you seek, but instead, you have found me, the last remnant. Individuality is an illusion. The details of my existence are no more important than the history of a stone. However, if you insist, I once served as the keeper of the great library of Jyggalag." Throughout recorded history, only one artifact is believed to have been created by the Prince of Order, the Sword of Jyggalag. According to the journal of an individual named Thoron found in Skyrim, we learn that the sword actually has mysterious powers that reflect the knowledge once contained in Jyggalag's great library. As Thoron writes, quote, "When I look upon its crystal edge, I see more than my reflection. I begin to see time the way a cloud sees the river. It has a beginning and an end, but they exist in concert. The past, present, and future flow as one. I spoke to a cloud the next day, and it confirmed this to be true. Through the sword's visions, I know what is to come." Originally wielded by Jyggalag himself in the Grey March until his defeat to Sheogorath's mortal champion in the Third Era, the sword then went on display as a trophy of sorts through the events of the Shivering Isles until it came into the possession of Thoron in the Fourth Era. Of course, then we, as the last Dragonborn, then have a chance to execute Thoron and claim the sword for ourselves in Skyrim. Now that we've talked about Jyggalag, it's time to dive into Sheogorath. Sheogorath, the Prince of Madness, the Mad God, and the Giver of Cheese. Or maybe not. To know Sheogorath and see through the madness is impossible. And when it comes to this Daedric prince, nothing is as it appears. His sphere, as described in the Book of the Daedra, is madness, with the mad god's motives being unknowable. It's because of this that above all, Sheogorath and his actions can't be understood. He's unpredictable, thinking and speaking with little consistency in his words and acts. Oftentimes this comes at the expense of mortals, as he finds great joy in taking them down the rabbit hole of madness. Sheogorath was created as the foil to Jyggalag in times before mortal memory, when the other Daedric princes became envious and fearful of his power. In response, they banded together and cursed Jyggalag to live as Sheogorath, who represents everything that is the complete opposite of order. Once, at the end of every era, Jyggalag returns with the forces of order in an attempt to reclaim the realm known as the Shivering Isles. This event, known as the Grey March and seen in Oblivion's Shivering Isles DLC, ends with Jyggalag once again transforming back into Sheogorath, who continues with his plan to spread madness throughout the realm once more. Depicted as an older humanoid with grey hair and a beard, often wearing colorful, eccentric clothing, Sheogorath describes himself in a rather interesting way in Skyrim's Mind of Madness quest, where he says, quote, "I am a part of you, little mortal. I am a shadow in your subconscious, a blemish on your fragile little psyche. You know me, you just don't know it. You can call me Anne-Marie, but only if you're partial to being flayed alive and having an angry immortal skip rope with your entrails. If not, then call me Sheogorath, Daedric Prince of Madness." It's during this quest and journey into the mind of Pelagius III that we gain valuable insight into Sheogorath's meddling, which gives life to the claims that Sheogorath's favorite pastime is torture. Before being known as Pelagius the Mad, Pelagius was considered to be eccentric. In the book Madness of Pelagius, we hear stories of the king making odd decisions, such as speaking to the Argonian ambassador from Black Rose in nothing but, quote, grunts and squeaks. In another instance, recorded in Brief History of the Empire Volume 2, we learn more about his unpredictable and increasingly unraveled nature, which forced his wife to take control in his place. Quote, almost from the start, his eccentricities of behavior were noted at court. He embarrassed dignitaries, offended his vassal kings, and on one occasion marked the end of an imperial grand ball by attempting to hang himself. His long-suffering wife was finally awarded the regency of Tamriel, and Pelagius III was sent to a series of healing institutions and asylums until his death in 353 of the Third Era at the age of 34. At the end of the previously mentioned quest in Skyrim, we're awarded the Wabbajack for instilling peace into the mind of Pelagius. This artifact reflects the unpredictable and incomprehensible nature of Sheogorath. Often depicted with a trio of what appear to be screaming faces, when used on a target, the Wabbajack will transform the victim into a random creature, turning the most fearsome of warriors into a chicken, or a dog into a Dremora. In addition, when used on a dragon, for example, the artifact will deal elemental damage. The earliest known piece of history surrounding the Wabbajack cites a Yokudan prince named Malil al-Akir as the first to have possession over it. However, in typical Sheogorath fashion, it's unclear just where it came from beyond being created by the Prince of Madness. Given his unpredictable nature, it isn't much of a surprise that Sheogorath has a slew of artifacts associated with him besides the Wabbajack. For example, Folium Discognitum, a tome of knowledge created by Sheogorath, considered to be nearly all but incomprehensible, not only because it's considered to be ramblings from the mind of the mad, but also because, as the item description indicates, the words move across the page of their own accord, avoiding the reader's gaze. Another artifact created by Sheogorath is the Fork of Horripilation, or as Sheogorath likes to call it, Forky. It may look like an ordinary dinner fork, however, as Sheogorath writes in a mysterious note found in Skyrim, quote, "Oh, how I do love cutlery. But what is it, you must be asking? Well, horripilation is the standing of hairs on end due to cold, fear, or excitement, and excitement is indeed upon us, my friend." As we learn, Sheogorath enjoys it when mortals use it as a weapon. However, this has unintended and unexpected consequences, which results in damage being dealt to whoever wields it, courtesy of the aptly named Fork's Wound. Another artifact with an even more grim role is Gamblepuddy, also known as the Ambiguous Glove, which is used in ceremonial sacrifices at Sheogorath's shrine in Old Daedroth. In Morrowind, it's said that this ritual renews a pact between the Dunmer and the Daedric prince to keep him from, quote, tormenting them with madness. Sheogorath is also credited with creating the Memory Wand, an artifact used by the Prince of Madness to cause unwilling subjects to go mad over time, forcing them to relive painful memories, some of which are true, some of which are false, and some of which lie in between, with the victim unsure of what is and isn't reality. Sheogorath also has a staff named after him called the Staff of Sheogorath, which contains the power of the Shivering Isles. Because of that, the staff becomes less and less powerful during the Grey March, signifying the start of Sheogorath's transformation back into Jyggalag. Sheogorath is also associated with another staff called the Staff of the Everscamp, which allows whoever wields it to summon Everscamps to the mortal plane. True to his nature, the staff has the word nonsense etched into it in Daedric symbols. As we learn in Oblivion from a Dunmer alchemist named Alvis Uvanim, in addition to making the owner physically move slower, quote, The only way she can be rid of it is if someone willingly accepts it. It can't be discarded in any other manner. No one would buy that thing once it's activated like it's been. The only chance is to return it to its original resting place. Sheogorath's also associated with two other artifacts, one of which is called Sheogorath's Regalia, which describes the distinctly unique wardrobe belonging to the Daedric prince. The other is a cursed sword created by Sheogorath named Neb Crescent, which makes whoever wields it mad with rage, compelling them to slaughter everyone and anyone nearby. According to the 16 Accords of Madness, Sheogorath used the weapon to trick Malacath, the Orc father, into unknowingly using the weapon on his own son. The account ends with Malacath staring into the face of the son he just decapitated, when suddenly, quote, Sheogorath strode into the clearing. He hefted Emegrokyra's disembodied head and bundled it into a small grey sack. Sheogorath reclaimed Neb Crescent from the corpse and turned to walk away. Malacath began to stand, but kneeled again, knowing he had irreversibly damned his own offspring to the realm of Sheogorath, and mourned his failure as the sound of his son's hoarse pleas faded into the frozen horizon. That sort of nightmarish story of Sheogorath brings us to the final Daedric prince in today's video, Malacath. Malacath, also known as the Daedric Prince of Lies, Deception and Hypocrisy, the Lord of Ash and Bone, and the patron of the Orcs, although there are plenty of conflicting accounts of how this came to be. Malacath, who rules over a realm of oblivion known as the Ash Pit, is deeply protective of the Orcs. This is reflected in his sphere, described in the Book of Daedra as, quote, the patronage of the spurned and ostracized, the keeper of the sworn oath and the bloody curse. The book quoted previously, The True Nature of Orcs, sheds light on the Daedric prince's origins, which aren't actually Daedric at all, but rather Adric. As legend tells, once considered to be the strongest of the Altmeri ancestor spirits, Malacath, then known as Trinimac, was consumed by Boethiah and transformed inside the Daedric prince, with the Idra's body and spirit being corrupted. Upon being reborn, Trinimac, along with his followers, had been transformed into Malacath and the Orcs we know today. The events that led to such a shocking twist of fate vary by region and race. A book from the Merethic era, Moloch, Orc Father, tells a story of visions of Boethiah seen by the Chimer prophet Veloth, which led to a split between Trinimac's own followers and the new splinter cell followers of Veloth. Veloth's founding of this new sect of Altmeri enraged Trinimac and led to a confrontation between he and Boethiah, where the two fought one another. Orsima legend indicates that at one point Trinimac had the edge and was about to strike down Boethiah when the Daedric prince Mephala, who we'll talk more about later on, appeared and stabbed Trinimac in the back, opening the door for Boethiah to cast a ritual that scarred and twisted Trinimac's appearance, before then banishing him to a place of, quote, choking air and ash. There, Trinimac was reborn in blood, slicing open his own chest and tearing the shame of defeat from his spirit, thus taking the new form of Moloch, the god of curses, known across Tamriel as Malacath, with the Orcs being born of his blood. According to this iteration of the story, it was on that day that Moloch also created the oath Orcs live by today, quote, do not steal, do not kill your kin, do not attack without cause. Those who break these rules must pay the blood price. A contrasting version of the story, as referenced previously from the book The True Nature of Orcs, says that Boethiah ate Trinimac after tricking the Aedra by asking for a kiss, with Trinimac transforming into Malacath inside the belly of the Daedric prince, who then, shall we say, defecated, with the vile Malacath being reborn of his excrement. In this iteration of the story, some of those in attendance then rubbed the excrement on themselves, changing their skin and transforming into the orcs we know today. The fall of Trinomac sums up this story from one perspective, while also shedding light on the nature of orcs, which we'll get into in a bit. In the fall of Trinomac, the Faithless One writes, quote, "It is said that after his defeat, Boethiah had consumed him and tortured his spirit in her belly. When Boethiah grew bored of Trinomac's torture, she released him from his prison and later exiled him to a plain of choking ash. This torture and dishonor left Trinomac twisted and enraged. Trinomac faded and was reborn as Morlock, the god of curses. With his mind bent on revenge, his most devout followers changed to match him and became the Orsimmer, cursed to wander in exile, a people without a place. This brings us to the orcs themselves, who consider Malacath, whom they call Morlock, to be the only god worth venerating. In turn, they live in their strongholds, bound to the code of Morlock referenced previously. Malacath is considered to be a vengeful Daedra, and this is seen reflected in his code. For although orc strongholds don't jail those who fail to abide by the code of Malacath, there's an even greater price to pay: the blood price. The blood price, as described in the code of Malacath, means you either pay enough in goods for your crimes or you bleed enough that the victim is satisfied. And my dear friend, orcs have a lot of blood. In addition, the Code of Malacath also dictates that the strongest male is considered to be the chief of the stronghold and is the one who decides whether or not the code has been broken. Given how much Malacath and orcs value strength in combat, it's no surprise that his artifacts are closely connected to combat. The first set of artifacts, for example, named the Brutal Bands, are iron rings forged in Malacath's realm, Ashpit. When worn, the rings curl the wearer's hands into fists, filling their ears with the sounds of battle, such as drums and clashing steel, while lending them the bitterness of orc kind and the strength of Malacath. Another of Malacath's artifacts, the Helm of Orion Bearclaw, also aids the wearer in combat, granting them with improved agility and endurance, as seen in Skyrim at Mara's Eye Pond. The Vengeful Eye is another artifact associated with Malacath, which is found in Elder Scrolls Online. The artifact, much like another artifact of Malacath's we'll talk about shortly known as Volendrung, features the symbol of an eye. Stained with blood, the item is said to have been given to mortals by Malacath himself, with whoever is in possession of it earning the favor of the Daedric prince. This brings us to the weapon artifacts of Malacath, Volendrung and Scourge, both of which we see in Skyrim. In the case of Volendrung, aka the Hammer of Might, the artifact was created by the dwarves. However, through events that haven't been made clear to us through the Elder Scrolls series, Volendrung became a Daedric artifact of Malacath. In the case of Scourge, also known as the Bane of Daedra, the weapon was forged from sacred ebony and was dedicated to mortals by Malacath. In Tamrielic artifacts, the last living dwarf, Yagrum Bagan, indicated that the weapon has the ability to send Daedra back to oblivion, and also has the ability to summon creatures it has struck down in battle, such as Dremora and Scamps. The weapon has also been called the Defender of the Friendless, which should come as no surprise given that Malacath is described as the patronage of the spurned and ostracized. Through the stories of Malacath, we can gain valuable insight into the lives, teachings, and code of the orcs, who are notorious for keeping their strongholds closed off to outsiders. In Skyrim, however, we're able to complete quests to gain the favor of the orc strongholds, giving us a first-hand glimpse into the followers of Malacath. This concludes today's video. My plan is to release the second part of this video sometime in late February with some shorts in between. Before heading out, make sure to like and subscribe. Cheers!